We ain't gonna let nobody turn us around.
Grace and peace from God our Father. We greet you this evening in divine love. And certainly I am grateful to God to have this privilege one more time to just be able to greet you in the name that is above all names. I'm excited. Tonight we gather again for another conversation during our Justice and Legislative Week. As I've said all week long, this past Sunday, we have traditionally gathered in the sanctuary to celebrate our annual Justice and Legislative Sunday. However, because we could not gather in the sanctuary, we decided that this year we were going to extend Justice and Legislative Sunday into Justice and Legislative Week. We didn't want to just worship on Sunday, but again, we wanted to provide an opportunity for you to hear from some of our elected officials, those who have been elected and chosen and to serve and to represent our interests. And we've had an exciting week. On Monday night, we heard from several of our Fairfax County supervisors. On last night, we heard from our Fairfax County Commonwealth attorney. And tonight, we also have some very special guests, some members of the Fairfax County Board of Education. I'm excited. And in just a few moments, I'm going to present them and welcome them that we might begin to have conversation together. Do me a favor before we begin. I would ask that you would share this broadcast. Share this broadcast. Thank you so much, HB, because we want to continue to get the information out. Share this broadcast. Send somebody a text. Encourage them to watch us. Join in the conversation right now. Be prepared to ask some questions because these elected officials have taken time out of their schedule to come and to be with us tonight. And we want to certainly provide an opportunity for you to hear from them and for them to hear from us. I'm going to ask that you would help me to join me in welcoming our very special guest this evening. We want to welcome to the First Baptist Church family, Elaine Tholen, who is a Fairfax County board member who represents the Drainsville district, as well as Melanie Merritt, Fairfax County board member who represents the Hunter Mill district. And I'm not sure if Karen Keys Gamara has joined us yet. If so, not here yet, but she'll join us in just a few moments. Ladies, I'm so excited and delighted to be able to welcome you to I'm about to say to Fairfax County, to First Baptist Church of Vienna, our Justice and Legislative Week. I'm so excited, so delighted to have you with us, and I look forward to a robust conversation this evening. So let me first just ask, how are you?
Just a little tired, but ready to be past COVID, right? But I'm super excited to be here.
I can only imagine. Let me just ask this: if one of you has another device on, if you could just turn the volume down on the other device, that you have. If you are streaming it, okay, because we're on Facebook Live. We're also on YouTube, as well as we're streaming on our website. So Elaine, I know you are tired. You're ready for COVID to be gone, right? All right.
Exactly.
Melody, how are you this evening?
Well, I'm getting energized to be here.
Yes.
It's been a long day at home with my kids doing virtual school and doing work, but I'm so excited. I remember, being in your sanctuary last year, and I'm so glad you could pull it all off tonight. So thank you for including me.
Listen, what a difference a year makes. You're exactly right. Last year, we were all worshiping together in the sanctuary. We had an opportunity immediately following the service to go downstairs into the fellowship hall so you had an opportunity to meet people up close and personally. We really struggled with what we were going to do this year, but we wanted to be intentional about keeping the tradition alive, because we really do believe that we are all in this together, that the community has a responsibility to the elected officials, as well as the elected officials has a responsibility to the community. And so I'm grateful that you have taken time out of your schedules to be with us tonight. I want to just provide you an opportunity first, just to tell us a little bit about who you are, how long you've been serving, and perhaps what committees you serve on, and then we'll jump into some further conversation. Don't tell your whole story, just a little bit. All right, let's start with you, Melanie.
Great. Well, thanks. Well, I'm Melanie Marin. I live here in Vienna, so I know that your congregation comes from far and wide, and not just in Vienna, but it's that much more important for me to be here. I'm a parent. I have kids in elementary school in Fairfax County Public Schools, 2nd and 5th grade, and education policy and advocacy has been my whole career. And I will say that Elaine and I have known each other for a long time, because I became very passionate about environmental education, and Elaine wrote the book. So I've learned from her over the years, and it was actually through that work on a national level that I actually started to learn about equity issues and access to nature as an equity issue. So I just feel like everything has been building and coming full circle now as we're really confronting equity in our school system and in my own personal work.
Wow. So your worlds are beginning to intersect. All right.
Oh, they're intersected.
Right.
They're all woven and intersected. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Wonderful. Elaine, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay. I know you're not going to believe that I am actually old enough for this, but as a young girl, I marched with my mother and Father Grappi in the streets of Milwaukee.
Wow.
And we sang, "We Shall Overcome," and we hoped for a better day. Now here we are, 50 years later, and I feel like, okay, I'm still working on this. There's just so much work to do. And as Melanie mentioned, very passionate about, environmental and environmental justice issues as well, and have worked on those for, years and years. And still, there's so much work to be done. And that's what gets me up in the morning is, kids and education and the environment, and, hopefully being able to make a difference, in those areas. We were chatting backstage a little bit. I've lived in this area for, 25 years. I've seen lots of development, lots of changes. I have 2 grown sons that have gone all the way through Fairfax County Public Schools, and, are off, working and, doing really well with the education and the background that they, gained here, in our communities. And so I'm very proud of that. And I'm very excited to be here. I represent the Drainsville district, which is right next to Hunter Mills. So, Vienna is one of my go-to spots for, great restaurants and consignment shops and, fun things like that. So, know the downtown Vienna area well. I worked for the school district for almost 10 years in our environmental education program. And so had the good fortune to visit many, many of our schools, and worked on a really nice project at Vienna Elementary, putting in a native plant garden with a Girl Scout working on a gold award, and spent a lot of time at Flint Hill Elementary School and, Madison High School. So, I have always enjoyed my time in Vienna. I do want to mention, coming from the Drainsville district, that our Langley High School pyramid is commemorating Black History Month with a 28 Days of Equity project. And so they've got readings, videos, podcasts, all kinds of things for people to participate in, over the month, including a book club that I'm participating in. So anyway, thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here and learn more about what your community is doing.
Well, thank you so much. And I believe that our third board member, Karen Keys-Gamarra, is present. She's trying to get in. Can we welcome Karen Keys-Gamarra and let her in, and that she might be a part of this conversation as well? No? All right. Okay, I'm going to ask if somebody can just reach out and make sure she has the proper link, because it appears that she's trying to get in as well. So look, thank you so much for sharing introductions. Let's jump into the conversation. Both of you, well, Elaine, you mentioned that you're ready for COVID to be gone, right? And as I said earlier, I am certain that none of us had any idea that we would find ourselves at this particular place. Here we are. This time last year, we had, we were just beginning to hear about COVID-19, and our lives seems to have been overtaken by this reality. It has clearly disrupted our education system, and some believe that it has prompted innovative solutions, such as virtual learning opportunities that can and should remain. I'm curious tonight if you share some of those sentiments, and are there other positive innovations that you believe that have come out of this particular period?
So, Melanie, I'll jump in if you don't mind. I actually had the great pleasure in the Drainsville district of recently going through a boundary adjustment between our two high schools, which, people don't think of that as being, it's a very tough experience for the community. We just had a debrief meeting today with a number of community members. And one of the things, they said was that they really hope that community engagement in SCPS includes both virtual and in-person meetings as we move forward, because here we are in Fairfax County. We all know the traffic can be terrible. It's hard for people to get to meetings. People have lots of things they need to do in the evenings. Our PTAs and our PTOs have seen huge increases in the numbers of people that have been able to attend meetings because they've been able to do it virtually. So their kids are eating dinner. They don't have to hire a babysitter, and they can participate in the PTA meeting in front of them. So I think public engagement. There are some very positive things where we can use this technology. I'm also hoping that, we can be more creative in using some of these technologies and affording opportunities for our students to perhaps, maybe we have an advanced course in, you name it, a science, a mathematics, language arts, African American history. That maybe we don't have enough kids at one high school to sign up for, but we could do it virtually, and we could have kids from, Madison, Langley, McLean, you name the high school, all over the county participate in courses like that. So we may be able to, broaden, some of our offerings. Just a couple of ideas, off the top of my head about how moving forward we can be creative.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, the school district. Hello, Ms. Keys-Gamarra. Good evening.
Hello.
I'm sorry about those technical difficulties. I'm sorry, but you've made it. You've made it.
I'm here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we were just answering the question that the pastor asked about, now that we're here and we've gone through COVID and built some, virtual learning opportunities, what comes from this, do we think? So I was agreeing with Elaine that, the school division created an entirely new way to learn and be educated and work. And that's not going to go away. It was a huge investment of resources and time and a shift in how we do work. Like there is no going back to the normal that we knew, because this is here to stay. It's an incredible investment. in the virtual applications, but also the hardware. Like all of our students now have learning devices, which starts to bridge the digital divide. But we know that it's not just having a device, it's also connectivity. But more than that, it's, is your family able to use the device in the way that you need to have that support at home? And so that's one thing. But I want to say one thing. I was reminded yesterday, I was on a few events. One was the National School Boards Association Symposium on Equity. And they were talking about how 20 years ago, No Child Left Behind showed a bright light on the achievement gaps in our system, or opportunity gaps. And I actually worked at the Department of Ed the year that became law in 2002. I think that COVID has once again provided a watershed moment, that it has shown the disparities, not only in education, but in our communities. Right. So that's not going to go away either, and it's going to fundamentally change what we do.
Right. Ms. Karen Keys-Gamara, thank you so much for pressing tonight and for being with us. I hope you've had a chance to catch your breath. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this new environment, COVID-19, and perhaps what are some of the new innovations that have come out of this particular moment?
Well, I think it opens up new opportunities. My colleagues are correct. It has, COVID-19 has shown us the disparities, unfortunately, that we have been dealing with for quite some time. But now that we have equipped essentially every child in our system with the the devices in order to participate virtually, it's my hope that it allows us to diversify how we reach our students. I looked at your comments, and I too have received reports that there are some students that are actually doing better in the virtual environment. And, there aren't enough studies right now to tell us exactly why that is. And there are others that certainly need that in-person experience. And so I'm hoping, and I know we're still transforming as a school system, as is education in this nation. I'm hoping that we use these tools to give greater access where many students have not had access. One of the things that I've been working on is the John Lewis Academy. And my hope is that not only would the classes of that particular program be available to students at John Lewis High School, but virtually it'd be available to people in our county. And so I think that this gives us an opportunity to address those opportunity gaps. I don't like to call them achievement gaps, because I think that every child, when given an opportunity, will succeed and show us that they have something positive to bring to the table. So I think we're still in the middle of figuring out our possibilities, but I do believe this gives us greater access for those students perhaps who have felt they have not had access in the past.
Great. Just want to add, if someone has another device on that's watching on Facebook or YouTube, sometime we can pick that feedback up. Hopefully we can eliminate it as best as we can. Thank each of you for sharing the answer to that particular question. The governor just recently introduced this idea of summer school. Students may not want to hear this, but he's introduced this idea of summer school to make up for some of the lost time. What are your thoughts? And is this a possible reality for Fairfax County?
Should I respond?
You want to go ahead, Karen?
Okay. We have actually talked about that some of that summer activity to try to be able to support our students. And so I think it has to happen. We have really been through a crisis, and we have a number of families that feel as though their children have been harmed, even though we're talking about, virtually an act of God. But as a system, I know that all of my colleagues and I are in support and have had extensive conversation about what we can do to provide mental health support, to provide additional remedial type work, to bring students back to where they could have been if they had not had this experience with COVID.
Yes. Anybody else want to respond to that?
So I was going to mention at one of our recent work sessions, I think Dr. Presidio, who is our, leads our instruction, mentioned that, he was presenting what they were proposing for the summer as far as coursework, et cetera. And he mentioned that it was 8 times the amount of opportunity for students to take advantage of beyond what was offered last summer, for example. And I don't know, I hope that's an accurate number. It's stuck in my head. But just kind of shows that, as, Karen was saying, we're very cognizant of the fact that, we need to offer some extra opportunities for families. I don't know that we're necessarily headed to any kind of like mandatory summer school or something like that. But and maybe my colleagues have a different idea, but that we are definitely planning on offering as many opportunities as possible for families and students to take advantage of. And again, I think it's a great opportunity for us to utilize the skills that we have in virtual learning and in-person learning, and try to offer both of those opportunities for students and families over the summer.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that when the governor says, there should be learning in the summer, that's a very broad go ahead. And then school divisions around the Commonwealth decide what works best. So he's not mandating summer school. He's saying you have the authority to do summer learning.
Right.
And so what's being explored isn't straight up summer school for everyone. It's, specific summer learning opportunities for students, who need them or want them. And, I'm excited about it because for years, there's been so much work going on about extended learning opportunities and expanding the school year. And when we talk about equity, we know that children who are in, families of poverty, they don't have the same kind of extracurricular activities that those of advantaged status do. And so this summertime when they're, off school for like 11, 10 weeks, that really damages the gains that they make. I mean, it's research proven. So I'm excited to see us talk about it. I know in the work I did last year on our calendar committee with a lot of community input, there's a lot of interest for summer learning. It just costs a certain amount of money because you need more staff. But
Right.
So it takes some creativity. And so I'm excited. Again, that's more the last question you asked, Pastor, that this is now an opportunity that's more fully on the table to explore.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Now, I know that you guys have been inundated with this particular point that I'm going to raise. Should you or should you not open the schools? How are you balancing? And I'm certain that this is a sensitive issue. It's probably one of those issues that keeps you awake at night. And I know all of you are parents as well. So how do you balance the instructional piece and the safety of the students, as well as the safety of the teachers in this decision-making process? Don't all jump at once, right?
I don't think I've gone first yet, so I guess I'll start. I think now that we've been in this for quite a while, I've certainly seen like an arc of certainly feelings and emotions, but thoughts and information has come to light that we didn't have at the start. Now we have a plan that's been solidified and it's based on a decision-making model. For me, the biggest struggle has been that we are local school boards with very limited authority that are technically part-time. And we, at the default of state leadership and federal leadership, are charged with making public health policy decisions. And that, our governor gave us that, flexibility, but I really feel like it was passing the buck. When we looked at New York, their governor handed them metrics. Our governor, the same time in July, said every school division figure it out. So it's been very hard, and I think our division has come up with metrics, but we are education experts. Right. And asking us to be health experts has been grueling. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Yes. And let me encourage, while we're waiting on our next speaker, let me encourage those persons that are watching, whether you're on Facebook, our website, or YouTube, please send us some questions. We want to hear from you tonight as well. Karen or Elaine? Elaine, you're muted. You're on mute.
I was trying to be respectful, keep my mic off when I wasn't speaking. We've seen such an evolution of data and information around COVID-19. And, that's made it, especially difficult for us, as Melanie was saying. We're experts in the education area, not necessarily public health experts, but, we've all been reading reams and reams of, CDC guidance and articles about, what's happened with other school districts and, how other school districts are operating and when they've opened. And so, and within our own district, we have, worked very hard to build up our capacity at our schools to, implement mitigation measures as carefully as possible. And, I do feel like we have come to a point where, our buildings are ready. We're going to slowly move in groups of students so that we can test the mitigation measures and make sure that they're working, as we move those groups in. There's more data and more recent guidance from the CDC that, shows that if we follow these mitigation measures, hopefully people will be safe. I think that we've also stood up, some ways to really, really make sure that we're getting data and information in a very timely manner to make sure that we're keeping people safe as we move forward. There's information around, how much, students need to be in person. So, it's interesting to me that about 50% of our families are willing to come in person, and about 50%, just sort of on average across the county, have elected to remain virtual.
Right.
So, we're in a position right now to try to offer, what a family is looking for, to them and give it a try.
Thank you. Karen, you want to, the unmute button?
Okay. So,
by the way, unmute, mute has become a part of our new language, right?
That's right. That's right. So I think this is a real opportunity, and I thank you, because I think we have all been inundated with people's raw emotions.
Right.
I think to a large extent, families just in our community has always just assumed that schools and open schools would be available. I don't know that I ever thought, other than snow, that it wouldn't be available. Right. And so as a result of that, I think that we've all seen such passion from our community. At any given time, I can open my emails and the beginning sentence would begin with, "How dare you?" And you can fill in the blank.
Wow.
Open the schools, close the schools, think about sending teachers in the schools, or think about why teachers aren't in school. But each person feels equally strong about their position. And so our board has been in the unique position of trying to balance all of that, as you noted. But I wanted to mention that because I think when parents are and family members are so invested in this, they're not necessarily thinking about the things that all the different opinions that are coming across the desk of a board member or our school system. So as I go forward, I'm focusing on accountability, right? We know that the CDC has given us mitigation strategies that are proven to protect people. And so I've, and a number of my colleagues have focused on, are we going to have enough masks? Can we accommodate the 6 feet? And all of those things. And what are we putting in place to make sure that we're meeting those standards? That's the way that I can assure parents and staff members, because just as we have 50% of students who want to come in, there are a number of teachers and staff members who want to come in, and a number who would write a letter that say, "How dare you think I should come in?"
Right.
So
right.
There are a lot of emotions here that we're working with, but I would say overall, it has made me really, really grateful for our staff, really grateful that we have experts who are there every day working out the details. And I just wanted to assure our communities that we haven't taken in any of this lightly. And we know how difficult this time period has been for our community.
Well, again, I can only imagine the number of emails that you've received on this matter, and I'm sure that you just can't make everybody happy, but I'm certain that you are making informed decisions. Let's shift just a little bit. Last night we had, as a part of our legislative week, we had our Commonwealth Attorney, Steve Descano, and he talked about, how unfortunately when a person is introduced to the criminal justice system at an early age, has the potential to have a domino effect. Recently, last year or two, there's been a great deal of conversation around SROs in the schools. And just recently, it appears that the Board of Supervisors has punted back to the school board in the sense that leaving the decision whether or not to keep the SROs in the schools totally up to the board. What are your thoughts in terms of SROs? What are your thoughts in terms of the need for them to be in the building, the potential harm, or there may be some circumstances that the community doesn't know about that you feel requires them to be there? What are some of your thoughts around this issue of SROs?
I'm trying to jump in. I was actually just looking up some data to share as part of this. So, this board that, I've been on the board now for 12 months, 13 months, and we had a lot of things on our agenda before COVID hit, and SROs was one of them. And we did address a number of other issues based, racism-based issues and bias issues, like changing the name of Robert E. Lee High School to John Lewis, looking at our social studies curriculum. We're also designing an anti-racist policy, which, Pastor, I sent information to your office that I hope you'll share because it's going to be a community engagement effort. But so I think that talking about SROs needs to come from also that place of talking about the anti-racist policy. But I will say that dividing the safety issue for schools with the discipline issue that has been conflated, that we need to separate that. And I was just looking up though at data because, again, this is a lack of state leadership. So in FCPS, we provide, I really want to pull this up, we provide funding for counselors and social workers where the state doesn't even require that needs to happen. I just had it. Shoot, it went away. Let me see if I can find it. I'll have to come back with it. But it was something like, I had one stat written down. Social workers. FCPS funds 171.5 social workers. You know how much the state standards of quality require? 0. And they fund 0. With psychologists, similarly. So again, there's so many times during this pandemic, especially, that it's we want to do this and the state is not there to be a partner. And so I think that our division is trying to do those right things. Now can we have the conversation about how to separate safety from real, physical harm and medical safety needs, and then get students the support they need, knowing that behavior is communication. And if a kid is acting a certain way, they could be hurting from something and need other real social emotional supports and physical supports.
Okay, I'll go ahead. This is another topic. If there's if we're talking about, return to school, that's a passionate topic. SROs is actually a passionate topic in our community as well. And I'm not sure even on our board or the Board of Supervisors that there's a clear view that officers need to be removed from our schools. And so I actually did put forth a topic for us to talk about SROs because I knew it wasn't just hey, take a vote and we're going to be done.
Right.
There are people in our community who absolutely believe police officers should be in our schools. They want even more hardened schools. And then there are those who believe, and as I do, that it has resulted in over-discipline, that we worked hard on our MOU with the St. Louis County to try to make sure there was a clear line between discipline itself as opposed to some sort of criminal activity. You would hear when this topic comes up, or even in bringing up my forum topic, I heard testimonies of people of how SROs enhance the community, how they're able to reach some students that perhaps aren't reached by others. But the point that I think we really are going to have to hit on is this issue of cultural competence. And as I raised earlier, with our board, when we weren't quite able to discuss it, Black and brown kids don't look at the police as the nice guy to walk down the hall with, right? They may have very different feelings about being in the presence of police officers. And so I think that this is going to have to be a broad discussion. We're going to have to be very intentional about hearing how our students are feeling, because we're not just talking about any old time period. We're pulling an issue out of a hat.
Right.
We're talking about a summer where kids watched George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many others.
So a totally different set of circumstances.
It's a totally different set of circumstances where we just watched an insurrection in our capital where people were carrying the Confederate flag in the nation's capital. That means something to certain communities, and we don't all feel the same. So I think fundamentally, we have got to create an open dialogue to be able to hear what that means. Okay. The other thing that I think that we have to identify is how we clearly supervise SROs if and when they are involved in our schools. Because I think that sometimes the lines can get blurred, and I do presume good intentions, but because of people's experiences, you have different interpretations of perhaps something that would not otherwise be controversial. So this is such a difficult thing to talk about, because I know I'm a mother of 3 young men. I mean, I've had the black talk with my kids, right? They understand. But not everyone understands that, and not everyone understands the psychological harm that can be created just thinking about that encounter. And so I think,
can I ask you, has there been space for that conversation? Those points that you've raised, has there been space provided for that?
The way of addressing it has been interrupted by COVID. So I submitted a topic for it to be discussed. Our board has prioritized return to school. Based on my discussions with my colleagues, I did not believe that we had the bandwidth to really give this topic what it deserves. And so I postponed that discussion. So I think that we, at least this was my thinking with my colleagues, that we have to be able to kind of get past this crisis moment and then create the space. I'm also encouraged by the fact that and I'm sorry to go on so long, but
it's helpful.
There's a lot of thought to this. We just hired our chief equity officer, who I think will be just a guiding light for this discussion. Whereas a year ago, we didn't have that person. So we may be riding into the appropriate moment where we can give this issue the level of attention that it deserves.
Great. I'm encouraged to hear that. Actually, I was just on the website earlier today, and I saw the person in the box, the Chief Diversity Officer. So I was very encouraged to hear that and to see that. So since we mentioned Chief Diversity Officer, let's shift to diversity for a moment. I think that's a great segue. Another hot issue, it has been diversity for our district, particularly as it relates to faculty and leadership. There are some schools, and I forget the exact number at the moment, where there is there's no diversity in terms of instructional staff. What kind of strides or what kind of messaging are we trying to ensure that this dynamic changes? What's the process? What's the program? What do we do?
Well, there actually is a process and program getting into place, a program that is going to very intensively help those schools in recruiting and retaining diverse staff, and not only racially and ethnically diverse, but also diverse abilities, neurodiversity. We want to really expand what we're talking about when we're talking about diversity. I know that in some cases, it's not just the hiring practices. In some cases, it could be from within the school building. It could also be factors outside the school building. How does our community, embrace people of other walks of life and make them feel welcome and valued as a professional? So that's something that we talked about that personally together a while ago. And so I'm really glad the HR department has a very focused approach to starting this now.
Right. And I will say, based on the conversation that we did have some time ago, one of the assistant superintendents did reach out and talked about some of the plans that they had, obviously interrupted by COVID. But I'm hopeful that they will pick those plans up as soon as travel, picks up. Anybody else want to speak to the diversity issue?
I was just going to add a quick comment, and I haven't gotten this to Karen yet, but, on top of some of the things that our staff are working on, the school board has advisory committees. And I was on the phone today with my Dranesville representative to the Minority Student, Achievement Oversight Committee. And so she was talking about, their committee is divided up into 4 groups. One of the groups is working specifically to make some recommendations around increasing diversity in staff hiring. And so I said, you really need to speak with, our HR advisory committee. I know, I attended one of their meetings recently, and Karen is the liaison there, doing some, really intentional work this year on recommendations around, how can we improve the hiring and the retention of a more diverse staff. So we've got some incredible community members working on this as well that, I left that call earlier today, and my next intention was to get a hold of, Karen Keys-Gamara and see how we can, make sure that these groups are coordinating and collaborating and working with the staff that Melanie was talking about to make us, the most efficient possible.
So Elaine is correct. I was going to say a couple of things, but I think I was sitting here trying to think fundamentally, what are we talking about? When we talk about SROs, when we talk about these issues, we're talking about intentional discussions that are just not going to be comfortable. The fact of the matter is we have about 20 schools where we don't have people of color working.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that the statistics show us that if we don't have a diverse staff and we do have local hiring, which is how FCPS is set up, that the staff there is handling their own hiring, then they will hire people who look like them. Mm-hmm. That is the way people work. We are drawn toward people who look like us, unless we're intentional. And so what we have to do now is we have to intentionally focus on improving the quality of the culture within FCPS, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's our staff, whether it's diversifying in other ways in terms of abilities and that sort of thing. Our research shows that diversity actually brings a higher level of learning to everyone involved. Right. And so there are some views that we have that need to be uprooted, right? Sometimes people believe, well, we don't need a Black or Hispanic teacher here. This is a predominantly white school. What that ignores is that the diversity of our staff enhances everyone's experience. And so what I'm very excited about with our chief equity officer that we just came on board in the beginning of the year is she is putting together an equity plan so that we will have a strategic plan to address many of these problems. We've been going to HBCUs. We've been, trying to make sure that Black and brown folks are getting into the pool. All of those
Right.
things are happening, but it's not changing. So now we have to dig a little deeper, and we have to be honest with ourselves that if we're not intentional about changing the culture, it won't change.
Well, I'd like to add something too. I mean, I think what I've seen in COVID is that the community relies a lot on our schools to do a lot of things. We've done so many things that are not directly aligned to our mission. It's pretty head spinning. But I think that we as a society need to take accountability for the fact that we have not made it easy for teachers or desirable for teachers to come and work in a classroom. And all the stories, realities we've heard from, children of color of how they've been, neglected, abused, prejudiced against does not make for an enticing job for, people who have had those experiences. So, watching vitriol about teachers and their motivation, if we as a community can presume positive intent with these folks who have gone into a profession to help children, we can help elevate the status of teachers, not to mention, paying them their worth, and yes, work on the school culture. But as a society, we need to own that and not expect schools to do all of that.
Right. I think that certainly we all have a role to play. But I will say this publicly, as I've said to at least some of you privately. I really do believe that this is an issue that has to be owned by the leadership of the district. And I agree with you 100%. It cannot be left that the hiring practice and selection process cannot be left totally to the building superintendent if the leadership is serious about changing this dynamic. It has to come from the top, and it has to filter down to the local school, but there has to be a clear mandate. So hopefully the equity officer and her strategic plan can help create a process that changes that dynamic, but there has to be some real ownership from the leadership in this regard.
Can I add something, Pastor?
Sure.
One of the things that I think is very difficult about topics like this is that people can get offended, right? They can feel as though, well, why would you say that? I'm not racist. I love these children. And when I say we have to have these hard conversations, we have to really look at the results of what there's one thing to say we intend XYZ, and there's another thing to say we achieved XYZ. And so I really hope, and I think we have to start with the board, because every person comes with their own narrative, right, of how they see the world. And that impacts how we do things. And we have to work to figure out how to best to put those narratives together for the betterment of everyone in our school system. Right.
And thank you, Sister Cheryl, for your comments tonight. We've been following them. Thank you so much. It's not an easy issue, and certainly sometimes the topic becomes uncomfortable, but it's a necessary conversation. Let's shift just to, let's say I'm on the diversity team and work. We actually have supporting. Yes, changing the culture and not checking off the boxes. Absolutely. Thank you, Colette. Let's shift just a tad bit as we prepare to close tonight. I think another topic that has, really been a hotbed issue for us. I'm sorry that most of these issues it's been hotbed issues, but it's the reality of where we are, and that's the admissions process at Thomas Jefferson High School. I know you've spent countless numbers of hours engaged in conversation and wrestling with policy and TJ's admission criteria, some believe is really just symptomatic of a larger problem. So what are your thoughts about the movement that has taken place and the ultimate long-term plan about issues of equity in the district?
So maybe can I just start with a little story? My older son went to TJ. Mm-hmm. And so this morning, just with COVID, the whole deal, he's now living with us here in Virginia. And so this morning we were having a conversation. I was telling him that I was, preparing to, be part of this evening. And, I was listing out some statistics about, where we really have so much work to do. I said, and I mentioned TJ. I said, given where we were, last spring and, what we saw as far as the numbers for this incoming fall class where, the African-American number was a TS, was too small. Like we couldn't even list the number because it was so little. And, that's really not good. So anyway, I just wanted to relay. He said, "Oh my gosh, Mom," he said, one of his friends that he has stayed in touch with from TJ, he said, he already lost touch with them, ran into him at a party, in Manhattan, and he ran into this young man, and he was like, "Oh, so, what are you doing?" And it was one of the African-American students, that he had gone to school with at TJ. And this young man was like, "Well, I'm working on my MD PhD in computational, neurobiology." So I was like, "Oh my gosh." Right. He goes, "I was kind of embarrassed to tell him I live in Brooklyn and I'm a filmmaker." He said, "But, it's just an example of, giving people opportunities and the amazing things that they can do. And, we just need to do more of that." So, I feel like our board, worked really hard to try to come up with, a good plan for us to follow this year to just try and, really allow each of our middle schools to, put forward, students, hopefully a more diverse group of students that will really be able to excel at TJ. And I'm excited to, see what happens with this. We just started February 1st, our new admissions process. So, we'll see what happens. And I'm really excited. I've heard that, the meetings have been held out at the middle schools and that, or with the middle school principals to start talking about this, and that they're all very excited about, really the potential at some of these schools that have not historically had students attend TJ, that now there really is a chance for that to happen. So I'm not sure if that really answers your question, but, it was kind of fun conversations going on in our household today, just around, just really highlighted for me that this is really important work and we need to monitor it and make sure it's working.
Anybody else want to speak to that?
You unmuting, Karen, or? Okay. Yeah. So I think that, look, in September, I believe in June, it was first arisen. And then in September, at first, we were asked to make a decision. I said, I haven't even heard about this for more than 2 weeks. Then, I felt like I learned enough to be able to make an informed decision. And the decision that the board made, I think, is appropriate for a public school system. Every middle school that we have should be able to send students to this public school. I do think it's a symptom of the problem. I said I'm sounding like a broken record, but it's the governor's school, legislation and regulation that we're working with here. But beyond that, I would have preferred if the discussion had started with what's the holistic plan for elevating and offering more opportunities for all kids, especially kids that we don't see represented. So we have our Young Scholars Program, which is trying to help lift up kids in our Bridge to Kindergarten program. But, this also gets to, we don't offer early childhood systemically. That's a proven investment that gets a humongous return on it, and we're still not doing it. We don't have as a state universal pre-K. We have very limited early ed and FCPS. So, it's a symptom, and were we able to make a little bit better? I think so. I hope so, because students said that the environment was really, really difficult and toxic was the word that the students were using. Wow. So I think that the changes we were made do align with our mission for public schools and using public funds, and to honor the talents and opportunities that students want to, have access to and bring to a school like TJ.
Wow.
So, I kind of find myself trying to pull out to look at it at a more, basic level. And again, you keep bringing up these really hard topics, right? But the fact of the matter is, the
next one's gonna be lighter. Right?
No, it's fine. I mean, our board really struggled with how to deal with bringing about change that honored the kind of education that TJ provides. I understand that. But because I have a particular view of that, I kind of felt sensitive to those students who were saying how they were being marginalized. I really supported the lottery concept, because what that did is it took out this whole, my child is just gifted and they earned this slot in TJ. We are talking about public education, and many schools across the nation that are offering something similar do use the lottery. And what it does is it eliminates, or it helps. I felt that the lottery would help to reduce some of the vitriol that we heard at every public meeting. Parents feeling as though my kid earned this, and placing their sense of value on getting into TJ.
Wow.
And if some children are so valuable and have earned their position, then what does that say about the rest of the kids who we believe simply need opportunity to access? So I think where we are right now is we're at a beginning, right? We've tried to change this. When I say we, previous boards have tried to change, and because of public pressure, I believe, just didn't. So at least we took some steps. But I think we're going to have to be very, very intentional about data-driven decisions, making sure that we're going back and dealing with those pipeline issues that my colleagues mentioned, and recognizing the type of culture that we can create when we start tracking kids, because unfortunately that has happened. And we have to give access to kids, give them the opportunity to higher levels of math in elementary school. And I believe that as we do that, we're going to discover more kids in those schools that traditionally had not been sending kids to TJ. We're going to find some treasure in those places when we do that.
Ladies, I really want to thank each of you. Clearly, we have tackled, and you are on a regular basis tackling some Herculean issues. And I recognize that this is no small feat, but we are so appreciative of you giving of yourselves each and every day, making the commitment to make Fairfax County a better place, particularly as it relates to education. I need to just lighten up the night a little bit before we go, because these have been some heavy issues. So can you tell me what your favorite color is? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? What's your favorite vacation spot? Come on, somebody tell me.
I've become obsessed with popcorn since joining this board. We used to have Smart Pop as a snack, and then I treated myself and just got popcorn from Durham, from this little shop called the Mad Popper. They do a once a month drop off in Nova, and my kids and I eat dill pickle popcorn today, maple popcorn and cheddar. There's like none left.
Wow.
So that's been my go-to snack.
Right. And now you're shopping around the country for popcorn.
Supporting the local businesses.
Right. Come on,
Wow.
Karen. Tell us, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite color? Vacation spot. Tell us.
I don't know how to follow popcorn. I think that, I want to say I'm trying to get away from food during the quarantine because
Wow.
of course I have to eat, but as a little joke, I saw a cartoon. It said, a woman speaking to her husband said, we're going to have to end this pandemic. We're going to have to get through this quarantine or we're going to weigh a quarantine. So I really am trying to find new ways to really exercise because I have been a caretaker of my dad for the last 3 years. So I'm very careful about
Yes.
COVID, and so I'm not going to classes where I normally would.
Right.
But I'm trying all sorts of dance exercise classes, and with these young folks whose bodies are much more nimble than mine, but I think I should get a gold star for trying. So.
But you're hanging in there. You're hanging in
I'm
there.
hanging in there.
Right. Elaine, please tell us.
Okay. I might not have thought of popcorn, but I'm going to build on that one. I love caramel popcorn. So if your place in Durham has it, Melanie, you might have to pass along that vendor to me. But I have to say my favorite spot in the world, I'm a huge alpine hiker, and just put me on a mountaintop with the big blue sky. And so blue, I guess, would probably have to be my favorite color on top of it. That's where I'm probably the happiest. And I will be wearing yoga pants once we're back in person for a long time.
The standard uniform, right?
Exactly.
Standard uniform. Ladies, thank you so much. You have been a real blessing to us. You've really helped us to understand some of the complex issues. And again, I know it's not always easy. It's probably not even, it sometimes feels like a thankless job, but know that your work is appreciated. And certainly we are the better because of your service. For those of you who are watching, please show some kindness toward our board members and to all of our guests who've shared with us during this particular Justice and Legislative Week. This week has been different, but we have attempted to certainly still lift the issues that are important to us and provide space for us to wrestle with these issues. Until the next time, and hopefully the next time we can all meet in person and just rekindle these relationships. But again, thank you for being with us, and to all a good night.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Pastor Walton.